Welcome to the podcast where we talk about all the things that are hidden in the shadows. This is Isaac.
This is Megan.
And on this episode that we should have probably done a couple weeks ago, we're finally getting to now. And we have a good excuse. It's not like we disappeared or the government kidnapped us or anything like that. Wink, wink. Just kidding. It's not like we had major cases. Well, we did have a few cases. I did have a few interviews. So I had other things that came up that I did interviews, you didn't do. But it's simply because we got hit with heavy sickness in the house.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the beginning part...
Well, dodged me and you, but...
Yeah. The beginning part of the year is always just like wonky. I don't know what's up with that. Like the middle to the end part of the year is always good. It's just always schedule stuff because Isaac's working full time in like the summer. But January, February, March, kind of April-ish, it's always just like... I guess it's because like weather and... You know, it's changing between hot and cold, and then like everybody else is getting sick with other stuff, and then it's easier to spread and all of that. But we have been absent because I would say January is when a lot of different like sicknesses really hit, and then we were just it took weeks to recover from. So I know you guys probably have seen on Instagram, I was posting about like a family emergency situation that happened. So my grandma got sick. I think we mentioned it a couple times on here, but we currently live with my grandmother, and she got really sick, just like a regular sickness, and then it was really bad, and so we ended up having to go to the hospital just to check everything out, and they still are just saying it could be like a virus because she was tested for different things and came back negative. But it's been a while since I've been in a hospital setting for a period of time, and it was quite the not the trip, because it wasn't a trip at all, but it was intense while I was there. The last time I really was in a hospital setting was when I had Killian, so that was like 8 years ago. I had something kind of crazy happen, so I thought I would tell the story here. Tell the story?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was sitting and we were waiting, and it was jam-packed, and we were in the area where like they would bring in people from the ambulance and stuff. And we had people dying kind of all around us. It was kind of intense. And there was a couple, but it was like a bunch of different family members. So there was this lady that was in a hospital bed in the room behind us, and we were actually in the hallway because the rooms were so packed, and we were in like this hallway that had like that the like covering that comes out that like blocks you, gives you privacy. So we were in the hallway though, and my grandma was on the bed that was the sheet covered, and then I was kind of like sitting on a chair outward. And right before the family came out of that room where the woman died, I heard somebody walking behind me, and I could feel like a breeze come by me, and I heard, "I'm walking," right? And I was like, okay. But I was so distraught with all my stuff that I had experienced, because that was like 1 out of like 10 things I witnessed while I was the couple hours I was in the hospital with her. And I didn't actually like see the person, but I just heard I'm walking, and the breeze and like a light. And then all of a sudden the family comes out of the room, like, hyperventilating, crying, saying she passed. And, I had to witness them calling all of their family members and saying, oh my God, they died, and da-da-da. And I guess the woman must have been fairly young, like maybe I would say in her 50s, early 60s, like, because her mother came to visit her, and she was an older lady, like easily in her 80s, being wheeled by one of the sons. And, the mother basically said, like, why did she have to go? Why couldn't, I be taken, kind of thing. And it was really, 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 really sad. But I know that, like, that gave me chills. So anybody that works in a hospital that deals with that kind of stuff on a regular basis, I commend you, because that is not for the weak. But I thought that was crazy because,
well, me and Killian were home just doing nothing.
yeah, it was a crazy experience. There was like multiple people that were like dying on the hall, and I've never been surrounded by that much death at one time. It was intense. And it was almost to the point too where, like, because I told myself as soon as I went in that hospital, I was like, you do not need to be absorbing anything, kind of block it out. And so I was aware, and I had like where I could hear things and I could see through my third eye and stuff, but absorbing the energy, no, I was like block. So it was intense.
And then Killian got sick.
Yeah. And then Killian got really sick. They were saying something with like another like viral thing. And he was pretty bad off. So it was a lot of craziness and getting out of the norm and routine and all of that stuff. But thankfully everybody is on the mend and normalcy is kind of coming back.
Yeah, Killian for a second had to watch his farts.
Oh man, yeah.
That way he would shit himself.
Well, no, we were in the store, and he is like Isaac. He has no shame where he farts. If he's got to fart, he'll fart.
I'm strategic about it.
Well, I mean, you don't hold nothing in,
no.
Right? And so he was just like, there was a guy just next to him, and he didn't care, and he just popped off, right? And, oh my gosh. And I was like, oh my, and like I had a fear because I know like he normally doesn't have like digestive issues like that. Like he's got pretty much a steel stomach, just like Isaac. And no, I was like, I had that panic, like, oh my God. Because, you know, everyone at some point has sharted. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody at some point has accidentally misjudged a fart.
4 or 5 times. I had to go. Like when you got the runs and you have to go.
Oh my God!
You're trying to hold everything back. It's a little like I'll let a little air out. Nope, that wasn't air.
Oh gosh. No, my mom doesn't have a gallbladder, so I know that doesn't happen to everybody that doesn't have a gallbladder. But she has like IBS, gastriotosis, or whatever it's called, and no gallbladder, so she's not allowed to fart in public. Or outside of the vicinity of a bathroom.
Yeah. I hope I never get to that point. But yeah, we just thought we'd explain where we've been for a period of time, because you're going to notice that some episodes we're going to release within the next couple of weeks or so are behind where they should have been.
Yeah.
Because I know I wanted to do we call it Soulmates and True Twin Flames, or on Valentine's Day, which is already passed.
Yeah. So we're gonna get you guys to where we need to be. So you guys are gonna have a flood of episodes. You're gonna be like, dang, what's going on with them? They're just like release.
But today's episode is a phenomenon that we've experienced when we first started this podcast.
Yes. So one of my goals this year was actually, when it came to picking subjects for episodes, was to do some research and find new subjects to talk about that aren't regularly talked about, that are outside of, because, you know, like we've been around for a couple years. So we've talked, what?
It's almost 5 years now.
Yeah. And we got me off track there with my wordage. So we've talked about a lot of things. I mean, you talk about Denver airport conspiracy theories, a lot of the major haunted locations, and our viewpoint of the supernatural and paranormal, I think, goes beyond that now. And we're kind of creating our own theories, talking about, you know, phenomena we hear with talking and making connections with other paranormal investigators and podcasters. And this was something that I thought maybe just happened when we were covering something. But then I started talking to more podcasters, and then I saw recently, it had to be maybe the end of 2024, a pretty big paranormal podcast that talk about how they were trying to cover a subject and they kept hitting roadblocks. Like, it was kind of weird, their experience, because every time they would research it, it was always, I forgot the podcast name, but it's one of the, like, the major ones. yeah, they would hit roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. And then the more I talked to other paranormal podcasts, they were sharing like EVPs that they would get. That was a major thing that happened to us at the very beginning when we weren't protecting as we were recording. Now we fine tooth our protection and stuff like that. I know exactly what we're doing in terms of protection, so things don't come in and out like they used to. And so, but anyways, we're calling this episode the Parapod Paradox, because it's odd that when you start, you're using your voice as a podcaster to get these topics out, but then the more you talk about it, the more things kind of happen sometimes that are weird. And it's a variety of different podcasts too in the paranormal field, like people that are actively investigating, people that just do the podcast and do more of a spectator point of view. It's happening to all of them. So, and it's different subjects too. So we're going to talk about like our experience with it, some weird coincidences that have happened. I'm going to share some EVPs in this episode that we captured, and some other stuff. So,
well, not only thing we captured during the podcast, weird things have happened while we were recording.
Yes.
Yes.
Even while I was editing the podcast, sometimes getting ready to put things out, it would be like my computer would randomly freeze and that happens, but like it was just ironic and weird that right when I was getting ready to record, or there was like episodes where it kept corrupting and there was no point for it to be corrupted. There was also that one time too where I did, the episode sounded perfect. I uploaded it onto our like where we podcast host from, and it was nothing but like weird audio track stuff. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I forgot what subject that was. It was like one of the darker subjects though.
Well, I always chalk it up to the idea that, I listen to a lot of paranormal podcasts started this time listening to podcasts in particularly, but I come to find that the podcast, either they're editing it out on their own, right? Because they don't want that sound in there. They thought it was a glitch or something, so they got rid of it, or they're not getting it at all. But a lot of the podcasts that are, I essentially call spectators, right? People who just talk about the paranormal, not involved in it. They might have experience when they're younger, but not so much anymore.
Yeah.
They don't get a lot of EVPs, or that, if any.
Well, see, and this is how I know, because we never like outsource our editing. Our editing is always done by me. So if there's a glitch or something, that's my fault. So sorry in advance. But I'm the one that normally edits the podcast. And it was like a self-taught. I watched like one YouTube video kind of thing. But there's a lot of things out there now that like AI programs and stuff like that you can use that gives you like studio sound without knowing what to edit out and stuff like that. And one of the things that I was noticing is, like, for instance, there's a software called Descript, and a lot of YouTubers use it, a lot of podcasters as well, especially if you just want like low maintenance kind of editing. And they have where you can click studio sound and it basically perfects your audio in one click. Like, you don't have to go through, it just perfects it. But I noticed anything outside, any like atmospheric type of sounds, which would also be EVPs, get knocked out. So I had used that for a couple episodes, but I noticed, like, you said you didn't like the fact that it was taking out the atmospherics of the room and all of that. So...
yeah, because when you laugh, it doesn't echo. You only hear it in the mic, and then if you lean back, it disappears. So I was like, I don't know that sound. That sounds too weird. Like, yeah.
Because I tend to cackle, like throw my head back. If you ever do video, you guys will see it. But
well, also, one thing I learned about, I guess, professional podcasts. Not saying that we're not professional, but more experienced podcasts, they have a extra mic in the room recording the sound of the room. So I was like, well, shit, if we had that back then, I can imagine what we would have picked up.
Yeah. And it goes back to the idea, like, is it just because, you're using highly sensitive mics and you already have those people around, like spirits or whatever around? Or, like, what is it? And that's the thing we're kind of going to try and crumble through with this episode is like, well, why is it happening? Because I looked through all the scientific, I literally plugged the situation into AI and I was like, Find me the scientific reason as to why this is happening. And there's little bits and pieces of different scientific theories that can kind of talk about it, but it's more of the idea that you're projecting this. And I don't really think that's the case because, like, for instance, with the black-eyed kids, who wants to project to see the black-eyed kids? I don't think anybody does. And there's some people that are very, very skeptical and just like are covering the situation, not wanting to encounter it. You know, why is that happening?
Like I said, a lot of paranormal podcasts I listen to, and I haven't heard anything. Like I said, either editing out or didn't get them at all. But I also think it's a simple fact that it might be us or one of us, right? Most likely you, that are attracting all of them to our location. Granted, now our house is well protected, hence why people hear less EVPs than they did in the beginning of our early days of recording. Occasionally we get them every now and then, but it's rare. Extremely rare now.
And I noticed too, when you have a lot of psychics on the mics, for some reason, I guess the fact that you're using your voice and you're trying to talk about it, and a lot of things, you know, that are on the darker spectrum of the supernatural, they don't want you to talk about it. They don't want people to know things. That's why they're hidden in the shadows. Dun, dun, dun. But
terrible pun.
That's literally why they don't want light put upon them, because if, you know, something is doing, even in human nature, when someone is doing something sketchy, they don't want the light shown on them on what they're doing. So I think that is a situation. But then also spirits are like, hey, well, I want my story out. Let me come to the mic. Can you hear me? Kind of thing. And if you can't hear them on a regular thing and they see because I think a mic is also universal regardless of time period to a degree. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking about it. First time in a long time we had an EVP is when we recorded that bonus episode with Mike G and Unknown Paranormal. We did that small round table. We caught several EVPs for that episode. And now it's to the point where, granted, we're not going to get much stuff here. Because we've protected our home from allowing stuff in. But it doesn't mean other people have. Therefore, whatever is at their location can pick up their microphones and then we can hear it here.
Yeah.
Or whatever's there travels from their place to ours through the phone, like we've theorized before.
And see, that's another crazy thing that I encountered. So back when before we started protecting and before Isaac was able to pull like darker attachments that I had like from my childhood and stuff like that, before he was fully in his ability, there was one podcast I did. It was very early. I think it was within a month of us not investigating, but doing the podcast. I went on a podcast. I want to say it's like Ghosty Girls or something like that. They're no longer a podcast, but they were really cool. And when they were podcasting with me, EVPs were going insane, like to the point they had to stop and are like, hey, wait a second. There is stuff coming through from your side of the thing. And I think that is crazy too. And it always happened when I would tell the story of the Hat Man and the girl attachment. That would always. And I think that sometimes happens with people when they go on paranormal podcasts and you talk about these stories. Is it almost kind of like putting the fishing line back out? You know, the imaginary fishing line of energy to whatever you encountered, you know, for it to kind of like, ooh, she's talking about me. Let me go back, you know?
Well, that was the case numerous times.
Huh?
Did you hear what I said?
No. I looked at you and I heard it, but I didn't hear it.
I said that was the case numerous times.
Yeah.
Like spirits around us like, oh, let me jump into this.
Yeah.
All right.
And see, I get a lot with researching because of remote viewing and channeling. And that's what I thought it was just a me problem. But then when I started talking to other people, and like I said, that major podcast was like, I couldn't even research it. Every time I would research it, it was like I was opening up a door and stuff was trying to come back. Whatever and it was correlating to what she was researching too, which is another crazy aspect of it.
Yeah. But people say that if you talk about certain things, it draws them forward, right? Mm-hmm. Like people say, oh, you talk about the skinwalkers, it makes them come and stuff like that. I don't know if it's entirely true or not. But we've talked about dark entities before and all this other aspect. Now, episodes we've talked about demons, we've had picked up EVPs during them. But those are the early days.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think thinking back, do you remember a specific episode that like gave us a lot of trouble recording?
Recording it?
Mm-hmm. Like we kept having to stop and whatever. I remember the Sally House was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Sally House was pretty intense. Amityville wasn't that bad. See, that's the thing that's weird with us is like ones that you think would cause an issue didn't really cause an issue. But then the ones that would, I don't even think, I was assuming the Black Eyed Kids one would cause an issue, but it didn't for us.
No, but weird things have happened during episodes we've recorded that didn't make sense why they were happening. And like I said, this is all before we protect our home, which is advice I'd give to anyone. Protect your house. If you think just the human element is enough, or is it you have security just against the human element, it's not enough. The spiritual element, especially if you involve yourself in the paranormal a lot. But the weirdest case thing that happened to us while we were recording, amongst hearing tapping on the window or lights flickering or something spinning, or hearing anything in the room or in the house, someone getting scared for some random reason. You were boiling a chicken. Oh,
yeah. So I was making something for Isaac. We were going to record before I gave him dinner. And I had to boil a chicken, right? So I had this big stock pot and I had it on super, super low. And, I've done this before. It's not that I haven't done it before. And so I left the chicken on the stove and it was very, very low. Like it was like a 3 if your stove, like our stove went up to a 9. So it was like on a 3. So very low, hardly even hot at this point. Just where it was like cooking as I was doing the episode. And we sat down and we started talking about the episode and started like doing our introduction. And all of a sudden we started smelling a burning smell. And
we had the alarm go off.
Oh, the alarm. That's
the fire
right.
alarm went off.
Yeah.
Or the smoke alarm, sorry. Smoke alarm went off.
Yeah.
And they were like, deet, 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 deet. And then they open the door and we see all the smoke coming, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And
but no one in the house decided, hey, maybe we should check it why it's so smoky.
Yeah. So, no, but yeah. So, I don't know what. Because like I said, it was a huge stock pot. It was 1 chicken breast. By the time, like anybody that cooks knows that by the time like I sat down on a level 3, and it was like from being off to a level 3, it wasn't like I had put it on like a 9 and then reduced it down to a 3. No, there was no explanation as to why that happened. Like it just did not make sense, even like scientifically. So
I don't know. It's like something pulled all the water out of it.
I don't know. Like I said, weird things have happened to almost like prevent us from releasing certain things. And I don't know. It's so bizarre. But one of the things that I did to kind of get some more perspective for this episode was I posted twice to our Instagram to see from other paranormal podcasters what they've experienced. And we have some stories. So one of the first people that commented was a podcast called Red Treehouse Pod. And I was actually interested.
You've been on there several times.
Yes.
Well, sorry, we submitted their stories and then I actually did an interview with them as well.
Yeah. Really cool guy. And he basically does a lot of like storytelling. Like he tells people stories on his podcast. And so I was really curious. I was actually going to message him directly because I was thinking in my head, he's reading these people's stories, these experiences. He's got to have had something happened based on what we've experienced and, talking to other people. And he commented and he said, I had a short 5 to 7 second audio clip of a woman's voice laid over mine saying goodnight. Happened while I was recording one of the earlier episodes of the Red Tree House.
Yeah.
Good night. Ooh. It's even weirder when the EVPs and everything correlate to what you're talking about. Like I've had where I think we did one episode and one of the EVPs was like, I know. And we were just like telling about a topic and it just said, I know. And I was just like, that's weird. Weird. Another person that commented was the Something Strange podcast. This just happened to us recently. So this was actually commented about 9 weeks ago. I'm still waiting for my co-host to tell me if she hears something weird in the audio, but essentially they picked up something EVP wise. So weird. So Paranormal Patrol also commented. They said, I turned this one over to Jenny from the podcast, but after we started recording in the studio, which was in her house, her young daughter was watching someone, in quotation marks, in her bedroom. Her dad couldn't see and was pretty adamant about pointing it out. She also apparently talked to someone not visibly there. So
I may realize like other podcasters that we've talked to before, all of a sudden like the house is never haunted, but like after like a year or so doing their podcast, interviewing other people, all of a sudden they got stuff in their house. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I can actually attest to that because back a couple years ago, my parents actually they rented like one of those like office suites, like, you know, somebody owns like the huge office building and you can have like a little cubicle area with a door and you can rent it out for like $250 to $350 a month or whatever. And my parents had one because I forgot why they had one, but they allowed us sometimes to go in it and do like podcast recording. And I remember, and this was literally, this wasn't the best part of town that it was located in because like down the street they found bodies and stuff like that. But I remember when we were recording, I was recording with somebody and it was in like December time frame. And I think it was Yami from Cryptid Chat with Yami, but there was a lot of EVPs and my sister was with me. She was even like, hey, I don't know what's coming in here, but I don't like it. And there was a couple times I did like the spirit box while I was in there and stuff was being picked up. So I don't know if it's just the idea that you're using microphones and you're talking about this and kind of opening up the channels, if that's a thing. But I don't understand because some people don't want to experience it. So they have that fear and they don't want to experience it. But is it also that vibe or that idea that the more you put, like, you don't want to experience it, the more you experience it? Because if that was the case, then Black Eyed Kids would definitely have been an episode that we would have experienced something. Because I don't want to experience them. I don't really care to experience that.
I kind of want to see how my ability fares against them.
Yeah. I think it's Spectral Paranormal. So on an attempted recording of Para-Unity podcast a few years back, there was an interference that turned into a deep growl and then a woman's voice was heard. And there's also been situations where there was a specific topic, right, that I was doing with somebody else or I was collaborating with and stuff just did not go right. Like there was one time where me and this other psychic medium, was very early on in Hidden in the Shadows, were trying to record an episode and it did not work. Like to the point where my mic was cutting out, her mic was cutting out, and this was over Zoom. This wasn't even over. And I remember we both freaked out because, like I said, I was just diving into my abilities. She was actually kind of mentoring me at one point. And I remember I was talking to her about this, and all of a sudden I see like a man stand behind her. And I'm like, yo, I don't know if it's because you're talking about these stories or what, but I'm seeing like a man stand behind you. And it's not in my third eye. It's like an actual shadow. So there's that. And, okay, this one is pretty intense. So Paranormal Thoughts podcast commented, and this is a creepy one. And you've been on that podcast a while ago, but you've been on that podcast. So it was commented that I had a weird experience when recording my Black Eyed children's episode. It sounded like someone was in the backyard of my house before our dog started barking. Caught it all on tape and is in the episode. Could you imagine? Ooh.
That just reminded me of something. I think it was the second time I was on with Phil from Unknown Inc. Podcast. My phone went off. And it was my phone. It was Siri saying, because I was talking about, which hopefully I can find time for it now, but the our Patreon thing where I do a audio play, which I was going to give it a certain name, and all of a sudden Siri goes off, going, "Oh, it's looking for that, like looking for that name," right? And I was like, "What?" Like she said, I couldn't find anything on that blah blah blah, right? And I go, what? And he goes, "What was that?" It's like my phone. I get up, Siri's activated. You have to hold the button down to turn it on. Yet she went off, right? And I was like, "What the hell?" I was like, "It didn't make any sense. There's no one over there. I was in the room by myself." Yeah, just like out of nowhere, it's like it goes, "Oh, I couldn't find any information on that." Like she was listening to me. Yeah.
Weird.
Never happened before. The entire time I've had this phone.
Weird.
Yeah. Unless the government's listening. Put on your tinfoil hats.
No, but I've had a weird experience. Maybe this will be something like a bonus episode, or maybe even me and Christy from Unknown Paranormal has also experienced this, where I'll have the radio, or not even the radio, like where my phone is plugged into the car, like stereo, and I'm driving and it starts like malfunctioning and saying weird stuff, and you can hear almost like someone's voice come through that's not related to the song. That's a weird one. 305 Paranormal, which they also do a podcast. They commented and they said, while recording a podcast with one of our fellow friends, and noise right next to me, as in something dropped in the floor. I looked everywhere and no one. We were literally recording and the other people heard it from their side too. It was that loud. Never found anything that fell. So essentially she was saying that like something fell and they couldn't find what it was, but they all heard it. So creepy.
It's I was trying to gather my thoughts. The phenomenon that I'm theorizing, hypothesizing. There you go. With this situation, because theorize is not the proper terminology to use. Is that we're calling spirits here, same way we use mics when we go talk to spirits and stuff like that. But since our lives are surrounded by the paranormal, that's what we talk about, the subject comes up a lot. So if a spirit's around here and us talking about something that, they're talking about ghosts, they're talking about spirits, they must be interested in wanting to communicate with me. Let me go talk to them. Hence why we get EVP over our mics. Are these mics made for recording? Not necessarily, but this is what paranormal investigators used way back when. You think about Ed and Lorraine Warren, when they first started their investigations, they had no high-tech microphones. They had regular microphones that people would use for guitar amps or singing or something like that, attached to a microphone, recording to a tape deck, and that's what they used. They use these. Granted, microphones have gotten better over time, digital recorders and so forth. So we've upgraded technology using to record with, anything, but also to catch spirits. Never was the intent to catch spirits, but the microphones got that sensitive to do so.
Yeah.
So the old technology of spirits around think, they want to talk to me, so they jump into the conversation. And I also, think, it's a high probability that if you have enough people who are psychically inclined in a conversation, you're basically upping the strength of the calling card for ghosts to come talk to you.
Yeah.
And that's not even counting the spirits that are already following said person. So you might have spirits there that want to be part of the conversation. Therefore, you have almost like a town hall of ghosts in one location.
Golly.
Every time you do like a paranormal round table.
Yeah.
So, of course, you're going to catch stuff. And I noticed that on our round tables we did in the past, a lot of EVPs came through. A very loud one time. Of a woman going, during it. And we all look at each other like, who said that? Like, we all, nope, none of us said that. I'm like, oh.
Dang.
Yeah.
But I asked because, AI tends to be more on the logical side of things. So I asked AI, I said, look, the stuff with the EVPs, I said, this is what is happening. Is there any scientific ideas as to why this is happening? So this is what they said. I don't necessarily agree with it, but we'll do our opinions on it in a second. So one of the things that they mentioned was auditory pareidolia. It's a psychological phenomenon where the brain interprets random sounds as familiar patterns, such as voices or music. When listening to static or background noises, it's common for people to, quote unquote, hear voices or other sounds that aren't actually there.
Yes, but we're recording said noises.
Yeah.
And then playing them back and hearing it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Equipment, artifacts, electronic devices can produce unintended sounds due to interference, faulty wiring, or other technical issues. These artifacts can sometimes sound like voices or other recognizable sounds. What do you think on that?
Yeah. But you think about the whole history of the EVP, a lot of people were picked up stuff recording-wise on non-intentional reasons to begin with. I remember they made a movie about that back in 2007, 2008 with Kevin Bacon, of all people, called EVP. The movie went far more than what it was supposed to do, but it talked about the science behind it and the phenomenon within the movie. And the way it ended was like, eh. But anyway, I remember the previews for the movie. I remember watching them in theaters. There was like a guy. I don't know if these are real stories or real EVPs, but talk about a DJ recording something. He picked up a voice saying, "I am Duncan," and then another voice saying, "Get out!" Right? People capturing those kind of EVPs at certain locations. And we have all heard the EVP, "Get out, leave," or something like that. If you're a paranormal investigator, even for a simple year, you guarantee you've heard it at some point in time. But while doing this, that's the stranger thing. We're in our own homes. We're not going to locations and trying. Well, if you did a podcast at a location, you're most likely going to catch something.
Yeah.
But most podcasters are doing it from the safety of their own home. They're not going places or their own studio, but they're not going anywhere. They're not attracting spirits to that location. If your house is already haunted, yeah, it's a good giveaway. But most people, like I said, doing it from their own home, so there's no reason. But like I said, the strong possibility of why it happens in the first place is because we're talking about it. While most people don't want to talk about this stuff, we're talking about it. Therefore, everything around us that's going, oh, I've waited forever for someone to talk about it so it can talk to me, finally.
Yeah.
Or in the opposite way, talking about me, I need to get them to shut up, i.e. the malevolent ones.
Yeah, because there has been... at some point, I remember we got an EVP that we got, or we both were like, whoa, what the heck? It sounded like something goes, shut up, right? As we were talking.
Yeah.
And like, for instance, psychically, like when I cover certain stuff, I have to like put up a block to make sure I'm not channeling as I'm talking. Because that's the thing that I know for me with the podcast is because we've gotten feedback before about my cadence, about how it's very jumpy sometimes, or like I lag. And it's because, especially at the haunted locations, I'm trying to prevent myself from channeling. And so I will sometimes lose my path of talking because like I'm accidentally channeled, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that's why when I don't have to have notes and I don't have to have pictures in front of my face, like this episode, I'm a little bit better because I'm not channeling anything specific, or I'm trying not to, which I've gotten better with. But it's taken a long time to try and get that down pat, but like 4 years. But yeah, I'm not channeling right now. I just lost my train of thought. So but yeah, so yeah.
So it's a bit of advice I would give to any podcaster, but not just any podcaster, specifically the ones that jump into the paranormal. You are entering a world that most people try to hide in the shadows. See how I use that pun now?
Yeah.
And do not want to talk about. So when we're talking about things that most people try to say they're on the fringe or the outside, those things that are involved in said subjects are often either glad you're talking about them or upset that you're talking about them. Either way, you most likely will collect some evidence. But it doesn't happen to everyone. And I should know because I listen to a lot of paranormal podcasts, and I often don't hear EVPs. I always wonder why we always did. Why do we always get them? But then again, it's us.
But see, a lot of people will pick up the EVPs in the editing process, edit them out. Me, I don't. I'll leave them in. I don't. Isaac is very persistent, like in the sense of he wants the outside kind of vibe of the room because of any potential EVPs or anything like that to come through. Plus, he likes the sound, and that's why I always get Isaac's perspective, because Isaac, especially when it comes to EVPs, because that's the thing. It's talking about like, oh, like someone like me that's not, well, now I am, but like before I wasn't used to hearing like audio recordings and static and stuff like that. I wasn't used to it. So I would always go to him and be like, hey, is this something like technological or like audio wise on the track? Or is this like something more? And, sometimes Isaac will say like when we hear an EVP, it could be this, could be that, but then there's some where he's like, nah, I think that's someone's voice. So,
I have good ears.
Yeah, he does. He has very good ears. So if you hear him at a location going, what was that? I hear something. Then you know.
But, yeah, the simple things I have to say to anybody getting to the paranormal game. And also those who are in the paranormal and podcasting game and stuff like that. If you haven't picked up EVPs, then it must mean there's nothing really around you. Yeah. So you've done a good job protecting your home.
Yeah, exactly.
But
so
I think that wraps us up here for today.
Yep.
We are having a lot more episodes coming out. Like I said, we are backlogged in a sense of episodes that we have to, so we're going to record and release. I know we have an SPC coming up. We also have an interview that we've done that's going to come up soon. We'll talk about next week, and next week's episode as well. That involves that said bonus episode. But, yeah, so we're back, guys.
We're back. And hopefully for the long run, that nothing else
comes up.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try really hard. It was ugh. That's the best way to describe it. Ugh.
As always, guys, you can catch our social medias at Hidden in the Shadows Podcast on Instagram, Hidden in the Podcast 2 on TikTok. Our links to all our social media and all ways you can listen to us at hiddentheshadows.com.
And always, then, wait, hold on 1 second. I want to add this in. And if you guys want to check out any of the podcasts that we mentioned, they're in the episode description.
Okay. But yeah, as always, we'll catch your weirdos in the next one.
Yosh.